5 years ago, we held our first symposium, in fact, 5 years ago today, in this very room at Columbia University. One of the greatest advantages of AGS being headquartered in New York City is that we are able to work with one of the finest universities in the world, Columbia. From the planning that went into our first symposium up to everything that is happening yesterday and today, Columbia has been at our side and supporting us in ways too many to mention. We are indebted to Dr. Robert Chen, Ms. Jennifer Genrich, and of course our own Vilma Gallagher, who works so closely with the AGS staff. Thank you, everybody from Columbia, for everything you do. I wanted to be sure to get that plug in right now because your new boss is here to welcome everybody today, and I want him to know how appreciative we are. The Columbia Earth Institute is known worldwide as one of the most influential organizations addressing complex issues facing the planet and its inhabitants with a focus on sustainable development. A couple of years ago, you heard from Jeff Sachs, who led the Earth Institute for several years. Jeff has since stepped down, and after a very lengthy international search, Columbia University convinced Dr. Alexander Halliday to lead this world-class institute. And as you would expect, Dr. Halliday is a world-class scientist. Most recently, he has served as the Dean of Science and Engineering at Oxford University, and he has a lengthy list of accomplishments and awards, far too long to even try to start here. We are very proud to have our new friend and colleague, Dr. Alexander Halliday, with us today. Alex?
Well, thank you very much for that warm introduction. It's wonderful to be here. I've been here in New York for 6 months now, and I love it. It's great. Well, we love it, my wife and I. It's a wonderful city. It's arguably the greatest city in the world, which, having spent a lot of time in London, I've got to be careful about. But the fact is, it's brilliant. And actually, the great thing about Columbia University is it's Columbia University in the city of New York, and it's also the American Geographical Society, strongly based in New York City, which I think is a wonderful marriage of, and synergy of interests. I wanted to welcome you all to this symposium. There's a few things I wanted to say, but the first thing is to highlight the fact that this is the 5th anniversary, the 5th of these joint events, and we want to make it many more in the future. So I wanted to say that at the beginning. We're very keen to keep on doing this and actually exploring other ways in which the Earth Institute can work with the American Geographical Society. In these 15 minutes, which is probably going to be a bit shorter because I realize you're all probably desperate for a coffee after starting late, I just wanted to highlight 3 things. First, I wanted to talk about the Earth Institute very briefly. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the subject of geography. And then third, I thought I'd say a few things about the growing challenges that we face in the world. So let me start off with the Earth Institute, which started in 1996. It's evolved into being the premier interdisciplinary network of its kind, certainly in the United States. There's a review taking place, published just last year by the University of Michigan and various university sustainability networks and organizations. And the Earth Institute's off scale in terms of the size of and what we do. We have more than 20 research centers. We have more than 700 faculty, researchers, and staff across the university. And one of the key things to its success, I think, is that it's not a school. It doesn't compete with the rest of the university. Rather, it networks what's going on across the entire university. And we bring people together to actually work on things like climate, of course, environmental data, energy policy, carbon removal, ecosystems, climate, natural hazards, public health, poverty, peace and conflict, environmental law, food security, sustainable management, disaster relief, migration, and urbanization plus more. And some of these subjects are getting more and more important as time goes on, and we're going to be expanding our footprint within the university and with partner organizations in the future. We bring together researchers and educators from across the university in subjects as different as engineering and philosophy, people who are working in medicine, of course, but also international affairs, applied maths, and material science. Well, we are built upon a very strong geoscience organization, the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which many of you will have heard of, which is just across the river up the Hudson, which is an organization that started off in 1949, and it's grown and changed what it's doing from originally working on seafloor spreading, nuclear test ban treaty and things like that, to now have a very, very strong focus on oceans and climate, but increasingly on things to do with sea level change, deglaciation, etc. We have 12 members of the National Academy of Sciences in that one part of the university alone, and about 30 members of the Fellows of the American Geophysical Union. So it's great to have this great organization, and we've also got a great responsibility in having this power within Columbia that actually we should be focusing very heavily on important problems for the future. So let me turn to the subject of geography, because one of the striking things about Columbia is that it doesn't have a geography department. And it used to have a geography department. So I come from Oxford, I've just moved here, where they did have a geography department, and in fact, one of our most famous alums is, of course, Theresa May, who is now running the country, or something like that, back in the UK. So not sure I should have mentioned that. Yeah. Anyway, so geography is an incredibly important subject, and when I first moved, this is the second time I've moved to the United States. When I first moved in 1986, I moved from Glasgow to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I arrived, and it was at a time when the automotive industry was going through massive transitions in Michigan, and there have been big cutbacks and losses because of the rise of the automobile industry in the Far East in particular, and it was being so successful. And so the state of Michigan was short of money. So they basically said, well, people told me what a wise thing it was to do. Let's not just cut everybody a little bit. Let's just close the whole geography department, which is what they did. They also closed one or two other bits and pieces as well. And the need for geography wasn't apparent to some people in those universities, and it seems that Columbia did something similar. And yet, of course, as soon as you do that, you realize how essential a lot of the stuff that's provided by the subject of geography really is, not just then, but increasingly today. And now we're having to reinvent geography in different ways in our various organizations, and that includes the Earth Institute, where there are some things that we're actually doing that you would think should be in a geography department, and there are some things that we can't do because we don't have a geography department. So I think geography has to be something we think about really importantly, and this is why I'm very keen to work with you. It's the ultimate interdisciplinary subject between the natural sciences and the social sciences, and it gives us an opportunity to really look at problems from both perspectives. So in that respect, it's great that we're partnering with CESM, which is ultimately a geographical organization. They're part of the Earth Institute and have been for many years. And we think that it's a really important way to be taking things forward in the future. So this brings me to the third subject, which is the future of the planet, which needs the Earth Institute, but it also needs geography. Climate change is considered by most people, many people certainly, to be the biggest threat facing humankind. Many of you will have heard of the case of Juliana versus the United States. Those of you who haven't heard of it, 21 school children are attempting to sue the United States over the damage the government's policies, or lack thereof, are causing to their environment. So it's quite interesting to think about what that might mean. I know there are a number of other legal cases as well that have been going through the system. But the question is, in 2015, the US Supreme Court passed in a 5-4 ruling the right to marriage. So it becomes a right for anybody to marry regardless of your sexual preference or gender. So the question today is, do we have the right to a stable climate? Should it be considered a legally binding obligation of government to set regulation to achieve this? And of course, taking that discussion forward, there are big legal issues around it and how it gets dealt with constitutionally in the United States. But it's going to be affecting us, and our researchers need to be focusing on this. Our children are going to be dealing with it. And it's a major moral obligation of the United States and other major countries to think about this. So over the past few years, American Geographical Society has worked closely with the Earth Institute's Dr. Bob Chen of season to actually try and work together on the issues that we need to address in terms of tackling climate change. It's been a part of the Earth Institute since 1998. So we need geospatial tools for this, and it's particularly important for what we're doing. And one of the main, perhaps one of the most obvious things, we think of typically geospatial stuff as being around boundaries, buildings, streets, hydrology, absorption of farmland, etc., all those kinds of things. But as we look forward, we've got to think about what's the future of the planet going to look like. So we need to know, we need to be able to use our climate modelers and our most detailed understanding that we can bring to bear to understand how the ice sheets are going to melt. And as the ice sheets melt, we need to really seriously, at the moment we don't have a very clear understanding of how quickly that'll happen. We know it's going to happen. We need to understand the implications. And one of the most important things we need to understand the implications for is coastal communities. What it's going to look like for different coastal communities around the world. And it's extremely complicated. And it's the kind of complexity that you get from geospatial analysis and geography, in principle, that actually needs to be brought to bear on this kind of problem. So as we ramp up our work on understanding sea level change, which I think is one of the most important problems we need to focus on right now, and understanding ice sheet destabilization and melting, we really need geography. We really need people to do the work on understanding how those coastlines are going to change and how they're going to be impacted in various communities. So you will have seen the 1.5 degree centigrade IPCC report. Many of us were, even though we knew what it said or knew what it was going to say, it still makes very graphic reading, very shocking reading. And one of the urgent things that we need to talk about, as well as sea level change, is how do we decarbonize the economy? And it's been fantastic to hear these positive, enthusiastic, innovative ideas coming out this morning about how we're going to do that. I know you've been hearing more about energy just yesterday. The Earth Institute, again, is doing a great deal of work in this area, in particular in terms of energy technologies, carbon removal technologies, and then we also have the Center for Global Energy Policy, which is particularly focused on these areas and how we connect with government on these particular problems. And it's building itself up as, I think, going to be the leading energy think tank in the world eventually. It's getting there very, very quickly. So these problems, despite the strength of Columbia, are too big for just one university. We need to work with others, which is why the American Geographical Society is so important to us. And we need to partner with other universities and other organizations across America and around the world to do that. I just want to finish by basically saying this is really, really important. It's not just a fun time to get together as a society, which of course we all do, but it's actually really important that we get together and we talk and explore and hear great talks like this, but then go away and do something about how to change things in the future. So in closing, I'd just like to say thank everybody for what they've been doing here, in particular Bob Chen and his team at Season, Jennifer Ginrich, who's actually helped to pull the whole thing together from the Earth Institute point of view, and the team at AGS for all their hard work in organizing this symposium. We're really grateful for your efforts and your commitments. And one of the things that's been most amazing about this new job I've had for the last 6 months is the sense of passion amongst everybody. People really care no matter what their role is, they really care about the future of the planet and what we're trying to achieve. So thanks for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's events.